Thanks very much for that nice, kind introduction, and a warm welcome to Jayant with our double act that we're about to start. So before I pass over to Jayant, it's very much sort of a Q&A style that I'm going to be doing today, but I would like to obviously talk about the historical influence of Loughborough University, not only on me, but onto the wider ecosystem of parasports, disability sport here at Loughborough University. So my non-disclosures is that I did not study at Loughborough, but I did volunteer. I need to be careful with my words if I use the words volunteer for the jocks, which was a name used yesterday, is that as an eager Loughborough University primary school child and secondary school child, I waited for my letter to arrive to welcome me to be a guinea pig tennis player at Loughborough Summer School. So as a sort of a 10-year-old, I'd be waiting for the letter to come. Only maybe 30 students, like pupils from the secondary and primary schools, would get that invite. And luckily, 1 year I got it. So I was here over the summer being trained to be a pupil for the wonderful PE students to be taking the summer school courses. And that was like fantastic to do. But like I say, my non-disclosure is that I didn't study at Loughborough. I did train at the track, so I was welcomed actually by some of the great coaches at Loughborough. My husband in the audience might say he's never really believed the fact that I did represent England at one event, but I did and was a heptathlete. And so I did sneak onto Loughborough track on a Tuesday and a Thursday night with the Loughborough students, as well as training the Charmond Athletics Club. And actually, I knew Mary in the days when she was a student because she represented Charmond as well. My best experiment, we talked about some experiments that people do, is this image on here. When I first was introduced to Paralympic sport in 1996 as a PhD student of Ian Campbell, who was a former student at Loughborough. And my bad hair day was a bad hair day for the whole of the duration of Atlanta Paralympic Games because of the humidity. So through evidence-based practice of attending the Paralympics 4 years later, 4 years later, 4 years later, I got to the point at London where I just wear a cap all the time, or I'd put my hair back into a ponytail because I perhaps still have bad hair day thereafter. So I need to do more of my experiments around my hair there. But let's see, the talk's not about me, it's about Loughborough. So let's look back at the strapline of where history begins. That is a strapline of Loughborough. You see it around the sports venues. And in the late 80s, we had a very young Ian Campbell who arrived at Loughborough to seek out to undertake his master's, which then went on to a PhD with Clyde Williams. What really amazes me, actually, is the great legacy, not only that was discussed yesterday, around what Clyde did, around checking slides, putting PhD theses on the table to say, is that the best you can do? No, go away and rewrite it. Is that was instilled in Ian as well, in the audience, for me, as his PhD student. So, you know, I think you've done a great job there, Clyde, in terms of you're the grandfather, and then obviously there's other fathers out there that are supervising students out there now, and obviously I'm doing that with my students as well. But what really is quite remarkably around this, where history begins, is that at the time that Ian was studying and he was working with Henrik Lacombe as a great technician here at Loughborough University, alongside Clyde, is that it was the first international study at the time out of 8 papers that had actually taken people in wheelchairs from arm crank exercise to undertake exercise in their sports wheelchairs. And we'll discuss that later on in terms of how important it is that if you're exploring sports performance of wheelchair athletes, that you must try and replicate the environment for which the athletes are competing in. So studies that were arm crank based weren't really that realistic. And when I Google back at what papers were published in 1987, which is this paper here by Ian in British Journal of Sports Medicine, like I say, there was 8 papers at the time, but the other 7 papers were arm crank ergometry work. And it was Henrik that devised this little contraption here with the good old Pete Carruthers, who was a Loughborough-based athlete working for Bromwich King just down the road near where B&Q is that he would come regularly and take part in this study and also offer insights of how to do the technology and the innovation. Here is a young Ian Campbell, but he looks no different in the background here. And that was him in the sort of early, sort of more 80s, 90s, when he actually moved across to Crewe and Alsager, a competitor, to Loughborough University to supervise me there. But the history line of parasport here at Loughborough University. So it started with the double act here of Clyde and Ian doing a lot of innovative work around the physiology of wheelchair racers, involving Chris, the Shades, #1 athlete at the time to come into Loughborough, a Welsh athlete. Clyde was perhaps in his element, chatting away to him. Tanny, also Welsh, a student here, a wheelchair racer. And I guess when my ticket came was, this is a recent photo, but my ticket came in 2007 when I was invited for an interview, and Stuart was the head of school here at Loughborough University, of which he employed both me and my husband Keith to come and move from Crewe and Alsager to Loughborough. So that was my ticket to the purple, the African violet community. And it was quite fortunate that at the time there was a vision by Peter Harrison to establish disability and parasport here at Loughborough University. And he gave a philanthropic donation for us to do and study disability and parasport here at Loughborough campus. Here's a picture of Pete with Baroness Sue Campbell there, winning an innovation award around his health technologies of wheelchairs to the community to get people physically active, like we've just been discussing just now and in previous presentations. We have Penny Driscoll, who unfortunately was going to be part of a double act today, who leads the Paralympic, or rather Paralympics GB, and she was a student here at Loughborough, and she was awarded an honorary graduate as well several years ago, leading the growth of parasport. This has all led us to where we are here now, where 2025, 2026, we Parasport Disability at Loughborough, in conjunction with Loughborough Sport, which I'll come to, as well as our collaborations with Paralympics GB, were awarded the Queen's Elizabeth Prizes for Education. And that was a real sustained journey, not only of perhaps the 15, 16 years of me being here, but the heritage of disability and parasport at Loughborough.
Knowing that you're in a chair that makes you feel confident, that you believe is quicker, can give you that psychological edge and confidence going into a match.
My project is about supporting the wheelchair tennis athlete to get the best wheelchair setup for their different surfaces.
The integration of the athlete plus the chair plus obviously the surface is really where our expertise lies at Loughborough University.
I think other venues are probably looking at it thinking, because it's in a chair, it's automatically heavier, wheels are thin, so it's probably going to mark up. And that's one of the things that we're trying to disprove. If we can have wheelchair tennis on a firm court that's playing the same as an able-bodied tennis player, and we can prove that that doesn't have a detrimental effect to the playing surface, then you can play on any court with wheelchair tennis.
This has been a wonderful collaboration with the All England Lawn Tennis Club, wheelchair manufacturers, particularly RGK wheelchairs, and also the LTA are a key partner in this project, bringing the players, the strength conditioning and physio expertise to the ground as well.
Collaboration is absolutely critical for any project of any nature to work, and I think that having the buy-in was actually relatively easy because they could all see the potential benefits to each of them.
Really happy that the research has been done. I think for players to find their optimal performance chair setup and being able to experiment the thickness of the tyres, the tread on the tyres, different casters, different tyre pressures. For performance, that's a really good thing to have.
It's been great to set this out in the world, and hopefully this helps a lot of youngsters as well to get their wheelchair setup right to play on the grass courts.
My dad was in a wheelchair and the accessibility for him at sport was slim at the time, but now that we're able to open it up to so many more people and the research that's going on to make it accessible to everybody, it really gives me a great sense of pride.
So that's where we are today. That's really what Loughborough's achieved. And actually one of my proudest moments maybe a couple of years ago was that research led to a new rule regulation at Wimbledon, and we appear in the rule books based on what the front caster wheel dimensions should be to enable someone to play on the grass courts at Wimbledon. So hopefully that video is just giving you a snapshot of the work that we do here at Loughborough, the collaborations, the innovation, and indeed what I would describe as the lived experiences of working with people like Jayant. Jayant has been a good friend and a colleague, an athlete, a number of accolades that I'm going to share with you on the next slide to introduce him. But I work with the athletes, I work with the coaches. It's a real team effort that hopefully is shaping Paralympic performance that we see today. So here we are, I would like to welcome Jayant. So I think there's a big list here that you can perhaps read at your own leisure. But he is a top British player, former British #1 in the singles and world #2 in the doubles. I think the biggest accolade that we can really, and I'd like you to perhaps clap him for, is that he won the Wimbledon doubles championship in 2005, the first British athlete to do that. He's represented GB at 4 Paralympic Games, and hopefully we can just share a journey about his disability, the role model that he has brought to young children to participate in wheelchair basketball, tennis, his sport that he does as well. He's a broadcaster. You'll hear some good commentary in a moment. And to top it off, that he's a partner, or he's just retired, if I'm allowed to share that, in terms of maybe not disclosing his age. But you're relatively young, Jayant, in the audience that we do have here today. But he works with our partners, Activity Alliance, that are based at Sports Park, that is literally sort of a 100-metre sprint from this building. And we work very closely with colleagues. And that, again, is a true thread of Loughborough University, of working with our partners and the fact that they are on the campus here at Loughborough University. So, again, welcome to Jayant. What I would like to do is just pose a quick question to you, Jayant, really to pass over to you in terms of how did you find wheelchair tennis? I mean, I think you are local to Loughborough and Leicestershire, and you'll see some great photos. But just talk us through how you found the sport.
So, oh my goodness, that photo on the top left-hand corner. That was back in 1987. Stoke Mandeville, jumper, the 50p tracksuit bottoms, my first ever competition. I actually saw a demonstration of wheelchair tennis when I was playing wheelchair basketball at Stoke Mandeville. And I thought this would be a fun sport to play in the summertime. Didn't know anything about it. Went home, bought a racket, played all summer long, and just absolutely loved it. Won a couple of entered a couple of competitions the year after, and did really well. And the journey took off from there. Really, I mean, my kind of background, I'm also a complete fraud. I never went to Loughborough University. I came away from education. In my old days, I went to a special school. There was no such thing as mainstreaming. We were all lumped in the same place. I left with 6 CSEs, 2 O-levels, and that was it. Sport for me was a great vehicle to actually go out there and actually express yourself. But until I actually went to college, I didn't even mix with non-disabled people. So my kind of history of all that has been that sport kind of took over, tennis took over. I was also working at the same time, being involved in lots of events that I won't bore you with, but I've loved being out on demonstration events and helping develop tennis in different countries, India, Romania. The photo on the bottom right-hand corner is when I went to Moscow for my one and only time, and we won the doubles there with Jason, and I actually got a toaster. That's one of the things. I remember back in, but my connection with Loughborough is over 20 years. I used to live in Loughborough. I used to live just around the corner at Grafton Road because I used to train at the university here. And then when I retired in 2007, I remember I got a letter with Loughborough University on it. I was like, oh my God, they're actually going to charge me for the course after all this time. And fortunately for me, it was like, oh, we'd like to thank you for everything that you've done. We'd like to offer you an honorary doctorate. And that's one of the proudest days I had.
Just that. Thanks for that, Jayant. So moving on then, we had a video that obviously shows the work that we've been doing with Alfie and other great British players that are on the circuit now. When you look at the chairs that you started with on that image there, and also the chair that you brought with you now, to some of the real custom-made seats that we see that some of the Dutch players have got and some wheelchair basketball players have had as well. So there's some images that we can just share here. Would you just like to talk through, I guess, how you've resorted to your chair that you have here and that you've been playing with?
That scary old photo appears again. We need to get rid of that from history. Well, the thing is, like in the old days, we only had one wheelchair, so you'd use it for every day. You'd use it for basketball, you'd use it for tennis, and for everything else. So therefore, that has transpired to the actual seating, the wheels. So I brought my chair down. This is a chair I've had at Peak Brothers at Bromkin. They actually sponsored me for a few years. This is the chair that they made for me. So there's a few innovations on here. Obviously, as you can tell, I've got my everyday chair, my tennis chair. On my everyday chair, the wheels are very straight. They don't fit in through any doorways. Also, the way that the wheels are cambered at the back, not only does that allow you to actually turn quicker, but it also means that with the wheel on the back, that means that you can actually push the actual back wheels further forward. Now, in the very old days, we used to have I used to watch top players, and they used to pop a wheelie to be able to then get out of the way of it. With having the wheel on the back, you can't do that anymore. So what I thought, this is my brain, I'll put a suspension on it. Being the first one, it was the only one. I think it adds too much weight to the chair. But these are the things that, as we go over the years, there's been so many changes. I mean, the thing is, like, you may be thinking, how do you actually get through a doorway as well? It's a quick release, but honestly, once it's on, you've got the ball bearings on, it doesn't fall off. But this is my chair, and you can see the changes in the years, and that's the great thing, is that things change over the years, and you think what you've done is the first, but players from I play from other countries as well. They come in and they change. You think, well, what are they doing? How are they doing it? So you reflect on what you're doing, but you reflect on what they're doing as well.
Yeah, and again, that's why I'd like to also bring in sports technology. So leading into London 2012, Loughborough University was working across schools with our school, Loughborough Technology, and we actually did take the examples from the sport of wheelchair tennis, and we did a more customised seating for 4 of the British wheelchair basketball players through working with UK Sport Innovations, and BMW Seating. So it was a fantastic project that led to a ref impact statement at the time. So moving on quickly then, we've talked about fitness, the good old bit of me making you be quiet after you've done a test. Ian Campbell taught me how to shout at the athletes to keep them going on the treadmill, whether or not that came from Clyde's experience. But yeah, I'd just like to pose the question, Jayant, in terms of, what have you seen around fitness and performance and this particular test here? Again, this is an upgrade of Ian's gadgets, but this is a tennis player here undertaking an incremental test to volitional exhaustion. But how did you find doing these types of tests, Jayant?
I loved it. Not. The thing is, like, when you're doing the test, I mean, the thing I've always kind of says is, well, what does that mean to me? What does it actually reflect in as an athlete? How do I get better? It's great to do these tests, and I can go and you can do our V2O max, and my ear pricked so many times by Vicky that it still scars me for life. But then even like with the test on that, it has to be done in your competition chair. It has to be done with your competition clothing, and then also with that, we also did testing not only with because I think that's Cornelia.
Yeah.
And she's not got a racket in her hand. So you do the difference between what you actually do with the racket in your hand to not with your racket in your hand. And there can be a difference with that as well.
Yeah, yeah. And moving on in terms of experiments in the laboratory, one key feature in tennis is you play in hot environments. So I'd like to show a very quick video of a wheelchair rugby player, actually. Wheelchair rugby players do play in a neutral environment. They play indoors, but yet their body core temperature can reach almost 40 degrees centigrade. And in fact, I've actually pulled an athlete off the court because I was monitoring them. They swallowed a telemetry pill. It read 40 degrees. I think my cutoff might have actually been 39 point something. I worked with George to ensure that we could ethically do the study. But if they had to swallow that telemetry pill, they would have carried on playing. And they do play if we're not the experiment who's doing the investigations with them. But here's an experiment here with an ice vest. The athlete's doing some sprints. And that particular wheelchair ergometer there was made in collaboration with earlier work with Ian and also with Pete Carruthers at Bromkin, and we nicknamed it the Bromkin wheelchair ergometer. But I think you did take part in some earlier studies in the heat, Jayant, where we were looking at localized cooling. Because in wheelchair tennis, and even in traditional tennis, you see people courtside with towels over their heads. I challenged that with George's expertise, again, another collaboration with other colleagues outside of the school, in the design school at the time, around cooling power, trying to cool the body core temperature down, looking at internal cooling with ice slurries. And I think we had you in the lab where we were trying to cool your hands down, but that wasn't a practical thing that you could do. We were putting things around your head. But do you want to just talk through the experiences of some of the studies you've been involved in?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing is that as a tennis player, we basically follow the sun. So we go to Australia in January, we play in the States quite a few times. So the heat for me, I mean, I'm fortunate in that I like the heat. So for me, it's not too bad. But when you're competing and you're out there in the blazing sun, you do need to have things to actually ensure that, because it affects your concentration as well. So the things that we used to do with the necktie, the wristbands, so where your blood actually comes to the surface, and that really helped me out when I was especially coming towards the end of my career.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think I saw some Loughborough Sport colleagues come in, so maybe I can disclose and maybe say that Loughborough Sport was fantastic with enabling us to use the tennis courts. But on one occasion, this particular experiment just here, we put a tent courtside, and maybe we are being recorded, but unfortunately I brought my home heater in and it wasn't PAT tested. And I plugged it in and we got the experiment going. And for about 2 hours, we blew the electrics in the tennis centre. So I'm owning up now. What I did do, though, is because it was a small heater, I put it in my rucksack and quickly ran out and put it in my office and pretend I hadn't used it. But I don't operate like that now. So anyway, we did some ice slurry work, again, with great tennis players. And what was fantastic is that I wasn't able to go to Tokyo because of COVID and the restriction of accreditation passes. But this is a screenshot here of Gordon, who won medals at the Tokyo Games, using the strategy of the ice cooling that we've done in the sort of simulation prior to him going out there. So again, that's evidence-based practice of the athletes using things. So just to sort of wrap up then really, is following your successes, Jayant, you have become a great commentator. And here there's an image with Paul Hands commentating at the Wimbledon. You do overseas commentary as well, and you're out at the Paralympics. I think in a slightly later folder, a photo. We've made headlines, again, from the days of the 80s, all the way through to London 2012 as a turning point in parasports, science and parasport itself. We've seen front pages in the media. This was me with paratriathlon within a Triathlon 220 magazine, which was fantastic that we began to be in the media. But maybe coming to one of my final questions, Jayant, I'd just like to maybe just ask you, how do you shape parasport when you're doing your commentary?
Well, hopefully what I do is I see from what the audience doesn't see. You know, you see a ball going over the net, you can hear the score, but my job is to interpret what the audience will see. So whether it's technical, tactical, physical, or mental, to kind of add those bits in. And one of the things I would say is that Vicky's been absolutely brilliant. The last 2-3 years we've been in contact, so I have a load of notes that Vicky actually sends me that I can add in as well to actually say, and that enhances my commentary as well, because it's not just about what I see; it's about the evidence that's been added in as well.
And again, that's for impact. I work very closely with Jayant, and I'd like to show you a clip now. So working together, I think that's key. We're working across school, across campuses, we work internationally. I've not really brought that in because of time today. It's great that we are working with Jayant, the end users, the people of the science that we're doing. So I'd like to pose one last question to Jayant, and that's really sort of maybe looking at the future in terms of if you've got one piece of science that you've learned or commentated on or experienced as an athlete, you know, what would that be, or where do you see science coming?
Well, I do a lot of stuff in meditation these days. One of the things it teaches you is impermanence, is that things change in your mind, your body, and everything around you. So what you think is right one day isn't right the next day. So it's, I would say it's evolution rather than revolution. And what I mean by that, there's so many changes over the years. I could talk about the reverse back and how that's actually coming in, the impact on that. But what I would say is it's constantly changing. The sport is changing. It's getting bigger. It's more high profile. There's more money around. So what we think is what is gold medal standard now won't be in 5 years' time. So we just need to be aware of what's going on now, but also have an eye on the future.
Thanks, Jayant. And just it was wonderful to be on the programme today. So I'd really like to thank the school and organisers to put paradisability sport on the map. It's great because the next slide is 50 years of wheelchair tennis. So if anyone's going down to Wimbledon, there's a fantastic museum down there, and we are having input with some of the science at that museum. Jayant is on a bit of a roadshow with his commentary and work. I think what we've discussed today in just a snippet of 25, 30 minutes is that Jayant's story does show innovation needs to be driven by people, collaboration, working together, understanding the sport. It's not just about performance metrics. Parasport can also be this powerful vehicle for everybody, whether that's people watching Jayant who actually aren't disabled to those people who are disabled. And I think it's a wonderful story that hopefully you've enjoyed today with Jayant's reflections. Thanks very much.